Hey everybody, this is Ben.
And Thomas.
Who are
we? Are the Curtis guys.
the Curtis guys? Okay, yeah. And what are we doing, Thomas?
Oh, so while you guys are in quarantine, like staying home, we are going to read this book, Mikey and the Dragons.
Who's it by?
Jocko Willink.
Is it one of your favorite books?
Yeah.
Why do you like it?
Because, well, my uncle gave it to me for Christmas, and I really thank him for giving it to me.
Okay.
And I really like it because it's about fear.
I love that. Well, wanted to do this book so maybe you could share it with who? Friends, family, cousins?
Yep, some lovely guys.
You want to say anything to anybody?
So, if you guys are watching this some other day, since we're filming it right now, it could be really good. I bet this is going to be a really good book.
Okay.
I've read it before, and I bet it's good.
Well, you're going to read it to them. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to read some pages, and I'm going to read some pages.
You got it. Here we go. All right. Mikey and the Dragons by Jocko Willink.
Drawings by John Bozak. From Uncle Keto to the Curtis clan, if ye are prepared, ye shall not fear.
Are you prepared?
Yes?
Do you have fear?
No.
I love it.
Christmas 2018.
What do you say to Uncle Keto?
Well, I thank my Uncle Keto for giving this book to me. I really thank him because he is my uncle, and I hope he's doing safe in San Diego.
Love it. Well, this book is dedicated to Mikey, Mark, Ryan, Chris, and Seth, who went into the fray and fought the dragons. Mikey and the Dragons.
There once was a little boy named Mike, and there were many things in the world that he didn't like. He was scared of spiders and beetles and bugs, and I always thought they hid under the rugs.
They were creepy and crawly and nasty and
mean.
And he ran from every bug he had ever seen. But it wasn't only the insects that gave Mikey a scare.
He left unalive when he went to sleep at night. He was scared there were monsters ready to bite. He hid in his closet under his bed. He thought they might get him when he lay down in his head. Okay. He imagined a monster with giant teeth and claws grabbing its neck with its giant paws.
And if it wasn't monsters coming to take him away, it would be slimy snakes slithering away his way. Yes, Mikey was scared of evil snakes too. He was horrified of what they could do. What about this one?
They could sneak in the house and hide in his drawer, then buy him the bit. Of that he was sure. There were many other things that gave Mikey a scare, which he meant there were many things that he wouldn't dare.
He didn't like the water or go for a swim.
Or to go for a swim.
He was scared that giant sharks might come and get him. He didn't like the playground with ladders and slides. He thought if he fell off, he would surely die. Yes, as you can see, things for Mikey were bad, and being afraid made Mikey very sad.
Because so many things scared Mike to the bone, it turned out that Mikey was often alone. He would sit by himself and look at the sky, and then he would pick quietly at himself. Why?
Why did so many things give him a scare? How could he ever overcome all that fear?
How could he ever stand up and be brave? Or would being afraid always make him a slave?
And then one day Mikey noticed a book. He opened it up and took a quick look. It had pictures of dragons with fangs like a snake and all kinds of scary things that made Mikey shake. But in the pictures, there was a boy too, who didn't look scared, but he looked like he knew what to do.
Okay. And even though Mikey was scared indeed, he decided that he would give the book a read. He opened the first page with eagerly read, and this is what the dragon book said.
The Dragon Prince, as told by Sir Jake, Knight of the Sea, Air, and Land.
There once was a kingdom long ago and far away. The kingdom suffered a horrible day. The protector and leader, the king, he had died. And when they found out, the whole village cried. When the king was alive, he was a powerful force. Now they took the dead king away by carriage and horse.
They knew they would miss him, and that made them sad. But there was something else that made them feel bad. The king had always been so strong and brave, and protected the kingdom from the dragon cave. The dragon cave was just over the hill, and filled with scary creatures that were ready to kill.
Horrible dragons of every single type who thought people in the kingdom were especially right. The people thought that dragons had breath of fire, and that the dragons stood 20 feet tall or higher.
They thought the dragons had sword-stopping scales and powerful, long, razor-sharp tails.
Ah! Oh.
But the brave king never let the beasts around. He stood up and fought as he held his ground. And as long as the king had been the king, none of the dragons could do a thing. You want to read that one?
Okay. Yes, the king always kept the dragons at bay by going out bravely into the fray. It seemed without fear the king would go fight. He'd beat the dragons and come home at night.
But now that the king had died and was gone, there was only one person to fight and carry on. But that person wasn't big or mighty or strong. In fact, he hadn't been alive that long. Now that person who had dragons to chase was just a little boy with a smiling face.
Yes, the person that must now stand up and be bold was just a little prince who was only 7 years old. I'm 7.5.
Okay.
He's 7.
Okay.
So I'm a half-year-old.
Okay. Close. Keep going.
Yes, the person.
And the people in the
village just couldn't be sure that this young boy, the little prince, could endure.
How could someone so young and so small stand up to the mighty dragons that were so tall?
Oh.
And the prince himself, he also didn't know if he had the courage it would take to go. Because he was so little and small and young, he didn't know if he could get the job done. How could he make the mean dragons yield when he could barely lift a sword or a shield?
When no one else dared to step up and fight, not the kingdom's guards or even the knights. So even though the prince was scared, he still knew that fighting the dragons was something he must do. So he went to the king's bedroom and opened the door and went inside and walked across the floor.
He opened an old chest that was tall and wide, where the king had kept all his war gear inside. The shield was big and the sword was so long, it was no wonder the king had been so strong.
But the prince was a boy, not a king like his dad. And to lift up the gear took all the strength the boy had. And that made the prince get even more nervous. And he wondered if he was ready for this service. Fighting the dragons was such a scary task. The prince to himself had some questions to ask. How could a little boy ever be a man? How could the little prince ever make a stand? But at the bottom of the chest, there was a small note, and it looked like something the king wrote. So, just when the prince thought he was over and done, he picked up the note, and it said, "To my son." He took a deep breath and opened the note he had found, and this is what his father, the king, had written down.
To my son, if you are reading this, now it means I am gone, and you are the one that must carry on. Our kingdom is now what you must save, and to do that, you have to be brave. I know that you think you don't know what to do, but remember that I was once a little boy too. I was also small and had fear in my heart, and I didn't even know where to start. I couldn't imagine going over the hill to face the dragons that wanted to kill. But don't worry, son, you will be just fine if you can't keep these things in your mind. If you can keep these things in your mind. The dragons, they aren't really that big at all. It is only in our minds that we make them so tall. Inside our brains, things always get overblown, especially things that are completely unknown. But when fear settles in and gets a hold of you, here are some things that you simply must do.
Stand up straight and hold your head high and look at your fears right in the eye. Don't look away. Don't try and hide. Know that you have to have a great strength deep inside, and you will feel when you stand up and go into the fray. You will feel your fears start to go away.
And though there will be horror you feel, these things you are scared of are not a big deal.
This is not to say you won't feel scared. Fear is a feeling that all of us share. Fear is normal for every person on earth. But this is where a hero proves his worth. A coward runs away when danger is near, but a hero will face things that they fear. So that is what you must do, my son. Face the dragons and do not run. And I promise when you meet them, you will see that you are just as strong as me.
The dragons that seem so mighty and mean are not ever as bad as they might seem. And most of the things that fill you with dread are usually just made up in your head. I love you, your father, the king.
Yes.
Now the boy was still scared, though not as bad. After he got done reading the note from his dad, the next day he got up and began to get ready. He was still scared, but the note kept his mind steady. Of course, he still felt some fear in his mind, but he knew he would have to keep it confined. And despite all the fear that he had, he knew he needed to listen to his dad.
So he picked up the shield and picked up the sword, and he held up his chin, and he went out the door. The people of the kingdom knew where he was going, and the crowd in the streets, it just kept growing. They stood, they cheered. Wait, where was I? Oh yeah. And they shouted and smiled and hoped the kingdom would be saved by this child. And the prince gave them a crisp salute, and he marched past them all down the main route.
And at the end, he stood up very straight, and then he simply walked out of the gate. Once outside of the kingdom, he tried to stay brave. As he walked toward the dragon cave, he could smell the fire of their breath and wondered if he would meet his death. But he remembered what his father had said. The most of the fear was inside his head.
But when he got near the cave, he looked all around, but he saw no dragons upon the ground.
So he walked closer and then heard some noise, And though it scared him a bit, he still kept his poise. Then he got to the edge of the cave and looked in and saw countless numbers of dragons within.
But when the dragons saw him, they scattered and hid, even though the prince was just a little kid. And the prince, he couldn't believe his eyes.
Because to the prince's great surprise.
Jinx. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Stop. The dragons, though many, were as small as could be. In fact, they only came up to his knee. And then when they breathed fire, it was just a tiny flame that any little matchstick could put to shame.
And their teeth were very sharp and white and shiny, but they were also so very tiny. The teeth they had were as small as a pin, and they wouldn't even bite through the prince's skin.
So the prince walked right into the cave, just as a prince and a king should behave. And one small dragon came out looking sweet and sat on the ground at the prince's feet. And the prince was convinced by this little sight that his father, the great king, was absolutely right. The fear was just like the king had said. It had all been in the prince's head. So the prince left the cave and headed back to town. And all of the people saw him come down. They clapped their hands and shouted with joy that the kingdom had been saved by this boy. The prince climbed up and stood on the wall, and this is what he told them all.
There is really no reason for a dread. All of the fears is just in your head. The dragons, they can do nothing to us, and there really is no reason to fuss. So have no fear of a dragon attack. In fact, the dragons will never be back. And with that, all of the townspeople cheered, because the prince had was the tiny thing they most feared. And the prince tried to tell them the dragons were small, but they wouldn't listen to him at all.
So the prince carried on protecting the town, and of course he never let them down.
Because the dragons were so small, and they really were no threat at all.
And the kingdom carried on forever, filled with laughter, and all of the people lived happily ever after.
And that was the end of the dragon book, and Mikey was so glad he had taken a look. He realized something that he had never knew. If you are afraid, there are things you can do. Instead of hiding or running away, stand up and face what makes you afraid.
And from that day forth, Mikey changed his mind and left his fears and worries behind. Even when he was afraid of something out there, he knew how to get control of his fear. He would stand up straight, hold his head high, and like the prince, look fear in the eye. And that is always the best thing to do if there's something that really scares you. Don't get controlled by feelings of dread. Remember, most of the fear is just in your head.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't to say that you won't be afraid, but you should know that fear is okay. Everyone gets nervous and has a good scare.
And feels like they are going into the dragon's lair.
But when that happens and you don't want to go, think of the lesson the prince got to know.
And that when you are feeling so scared of it at all, you just need to remember that dragons are small.
And that's the end of our story.
So thank you everyone for watching. If you are a different person, not from our family, thank you also. And we are now going to see this back page.
Yep.
And now we're going to read it. Can Mikey overcome what scares him most? Little Mikey is scared of everything, but when he stumbles upon a book about a young prince who must protect a kingless kingdom from hordes of dragons, there's a chance he might discover that his fears aren't quite as big as they seem.
And this is a picture of Jocko, the author. I'll read. He's a retired Navy SEAL officer and author. He has written multiple New York Times bestselling books, including Extreme Ownership. Me and my team just read that recently and love that. Discipline Equals Freedom, Field Manual, The Dichotomy of Leadership, and a best-selling children's book series that includes Way of the Warrior Kid. You read that?
Yes, I have it too. It's and it's upstairs.
And Jocko also has a top podcast that you should check out. And
It's called Jocko Publishing.
okay.
And where does he live? In
I don't know. Maybe Texas or California. Maybe
it
Texas.
says Southern California.
Oh, it does. There you go. You even know. Way to go. Well, hey, thank you for reading this
Yes.
with us. And you want to say anything to anybody watching?
Yeah, thank you everyone who is watching right now.
What
And now we're gonna read the next thing of the back of the book.
What about to stay safe and we love you? And, you know.
To stay safe, and our family, we love you. And the other people, we also thank you for watching, and please be safe, all right? Okay, so now we're going to read that part of the book.
John Bozak is an illustrator and writer who has drawn The Way of the Warrior Kid, Mark's Mission, and written Demo, The Story of a Junkyard Dog. So I'm going to maybe unshare the screen now, Thomas.
Yeah. Whoa, it's what?
And hope to see everybody soon and hope you enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.